Okie dokie. So spooky season's just around the corner. This is one of my favourite Halloween cakes I've ever made, so I wanted to reshare it, give it another moment in the spotlight. It is, of course, a skull, and I can tell you right now, I remember just having so much fun making this cake. What is it about spooky things? It's just really fun. I don't know, it just is. Sometimes when I'm making a cake, it feels like a cake, and other times it feels like an artwork, like a sculpture, and this was one of those arty sculpture cakes. I remember I got to the point of the skull being finished, and I was like, nah, I want to make it even grosser, so I ended up chopping the top of the head off and adding a bloody brain. Making brains, it's really easy. I just rolled out a piece of fleshy coloured fondant and then like squiggled it all over the top of the head, and then I added some blood just for the effect to make it look really gross and slimy. To make the blood, I just strained some jam, and I also added some red colouring to it. To finish it off, I added a slimy worm to the eye sockets and some more blood splatters, because why the heck not? Before I go, I want to know, where are you from and do you celebrate Halloween? Does everyone in your neighbourhood celebrate it too? Personally, I love making Halloween cakes, but I ain't decorating my house and I'm not giving any kids candy.
Это был самый сложный торт в виде маяка, который состоял из 3 ярусов и имел высоту 60 сантиметров. Чтобы торт был устойчив, собрал все ярусы в общую композицию и покрыл шоколадным ганашем. А дальше приступил к детализации. В данной работе ее оказалось невероятно много. Мне хотелось максимально детально передать атмосферу этого произведения искусства, маяка Анива, который расположен на острове Сахалин. Объемные детали и текстура стен будет из темперированного шоколада. Маленькие окна в здании из листового желатина, а для верхней части маяка я создал стеклянную коробку из изомальта, где будет скрываться маячный фонарь. Окрашивание торта было очень увлекательным, так как данная постройка старая и имеет много дефектов. А чтобы закончить композицию, я добавил желатиновую воду. И вот что у меня получилось, напишите в комментариях, как вам.
My mind, I'm feeling sane. It's been a while, but I'm finding my faith. If everything's good and it's great, why do I sit and wait till it's gone? Oh, I tell you, I know I've got enough. I've got peace and I've got love, but I'm up and I thinking I just might lose it all.
10 years ago I made a Grinch cake, and it wasn't the best cake that I've ever made in my life. So last year I decided to see if I could redo it and see if I'd improved anything over the last 10 years. As you can see, I'm handling the cake a lot. Well, I don't usually do that, and I usually wear gloves. However, for this project, I was using a lot of old leftover cake that had been at the bottom of the freezer for quite some time, so it was way past its best, and it wasn't actually going to be eaten by anyone. Instead of just throwing it out, I decided to reuse it to practice my skill and have a little bit of fun. This was him covered in chocolate ganache and ready for me to add some details. So then I started using some modelling chocolate for his face, and this is where I got to before I realised that I needed to make some sugar eyes. So I use a sugar substitute called isomalt, and it's literally just poured into these moulds, and then you pop them out and they look pretty realistic. Then I use a blowtorch to get rid of all the bubbles and cover them in an edible glaze, and they look really cool. Kind of creepy at this point, so I think I need to add a little bit more detail. Okay, that's a bit better. So then I'm just going to keep on going, and I'm going to use this little Dresden tool to add in lots of definition to the face. This is by far my favourite part, adding in all the sculpted details. But this is where it can go wrong, because if you don't get those details right, you're not going to look like the character that a lot of people know and love. So I kept going at this for a few hours until I was happy with the shape, and then I added in a little bit more detailing. Then it was time for texturizing, and this takes a long time. So I just went all over it with my Dresden tool and added lots of texture. Next up was starting to add a little bit of fondant for his belt and his shirt. And I understand not everyone likes fondant. I don't like fondant. However, it's just for decoration. So if you want to peel it off, then that's up to you. If you like it, then eat it. What do you guys think? Do you like fondant or do you not like fondant? I think it's a little bit split, but I think I know which way it's going to go. Then I added some cocoa butter colored green to paint him. People always ask, why are you painting your cakes? But I'm not actually using paint. I'm using melted cocoa butter and powder food colorings. So I mentioned that cake I made 10 years ago. Well, this is what it looked like. I mean, it was okay for my first, but it really wasn't that great. And this is the cake I made last year. I think you'll agree that there is quite a bit of improvement. Well, I hope so anyway. You can also see that his leg was bent in a pretty precarious position, and the fact that he's balancing on that, well, some magic had to be done, that's for sure. And just for scale, here's a little video of me next to the cake. And that's it. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope you love it.
This ain't Texas, ain't no hold'em. So lay your cards down, 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 down. So park your Lexus and throw your keys up. Stick around, round, 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 round. And I'll be damned if I can't slow dance with you. Come pour some sugar on me, honey, too. It's a real live boogie and a real live hold down. Don't be a bitch, come take it.
la 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 la. Hit it, my tattoo. There's no place to be. On Golden Sand is where I live. I play till the sun sets beyond the horizon. It's time to try the Hawaiian roller coaster ride. Hang loose, hang big, hop, shaka shaka. No worry, no pain, no big rock.
This customer requested a chicken cake. I first started by sculpting it in the shape that I needed, and I decided to cover this in ganache so that way it doesn't shift as much and it just holds together a lot better. I decided it'd be best to add this piece of fondant to the cake board at this part. Since there's going to be a lot of little details, I really didn't want to cut around those. I used a fondant mold that's a wood imprint to make this print on the fondant, which helps it look like the wooden planks. I also went back with a fondant tool and a ruler just to deepen those lines so you can see them a lot better. I wanted the imprint of the wood to stand out just a little bit more, so I went back and added a few more details. To make the legs, I'm just using some scrap pieces from the cake and just icing over them with some buttercream. And at this point, I did have to be extra careful since there was fondant on the cake board already. Now, this is a step that I always like to do, and I definitely recommend when you're adding a lot of little fondant details to the cake. I coordinate the color of the buttercream to the pieces of the fondant. That way, if there's any gaps in between pieces, you can't see them very much and it hides it very well. Now, I did say this was a chicken, so we are laying every feather down piece by piece. I started off with the legs and then moved on to the body. And if you are wondering, I did make these pieces out of a fondant mold. Here's a close-up of what some of those look like. I also dusted them with a edible blue shimmer, just to give it a two-toned effect. I also skipped the part where the wings are gonna go, since I wanted those to go into a different direction. So instead of laying the feathers up and down, they are going sideways to give it a little contrast so that way you can see the wing. Now it was time to add these little chicken feet. I made them out of fondant and let them set overnight so that way they can harden and stay in place. And I made sure to hide them inside the feathers so that way it just flows a lot better. For the bottom part of the body, the last thing was just to add the little tail feathers that I also allowed to set overnight so that way they had this curved look to them. Now, what I have to show y'all now is just absolutely horrifying. I was completely done with this chicken when I did not like the way it looked. So here is me just completely taking the entire neck and head off, shaving it down to reshape it, re-icing it, and starting all over. If you guys want to see what the first chicken looked like, I will be making another video over it. So unfortunately, this chicken did have to have a little bit of a cosmetic surgery. For the neck, I just cut out a whole bunch of skinny triangles in orange and yellow and just stacked them together. I then added that red piece on top of the head. I'm not sure what it's called. Then came these crazy bug eyes, and they are also just made out of fondant. Lastly, it was just adding the nose with that red piece that hangs around it. And this customer did request for there to be a red number 1 on the cake board. The neck looked too flat, so I flared out a few of the pieces to give it some movement. And finally, here was the final result. Let me know if you want a video over the sculpting process of this cake, and if you want to see how horrible the first one was.
This cake was for a very good customer of ours, and it was for her daughter who was turning 6, and she requested a Frozen themed cake. This particular customer usually sends us pretty detailed inspiration pictures to go off of, and this cake was definitely not an exception to that. I think I've done every birthday cake for this girl since she was born, so it's really cool to see as they get older what they choose for the theme to be. This cake definitely had its challenges and some technical things that I had to figure out how to do, so I started this video halfway through once I had the cake stacked and iced and the ramps figured out and everything. So if you guys want a part 2 on how I did the first part of it, I could definitely do that. When I started icing this cake, my first goal was to make it look like Eternal Winter. So I started with the blue paint around the side, and for that I just used gel food coloring mixed with some whitener and then blended that out to make it look like a watercolor effect. I went around the bottom of each tier with bright white icing and then blended that out to make it look like snowdrifts. I used white chocolate ganache with whitener added to it to make it look like melting icicles on the side of the cake, and then blended that into the snowdrifts as well. And at this point it looks like we're ready to build a snowman. It looks like a frozen wonderland in the making. So I got the cake ready to put the Frozen figurines on it. I didn't make these figurines, we just bought these for the cake. So I got Olaf on there first, and then I got Kristoff and Sven ready, and then added Anna to the second tier. After that, I switched back to putting the final details on the towers. And I've actually never made fondant towers before for a cake, so this was definitely part of the challenge of figuring out how to do it, but I think they turned out really well, and I can definitely go into more detail on how I did those if you guys are interested in that. I used royal icing to glue the bottom of the tower to the roof of the tower, so since I had that made already, I used some of that to add some snow to the roof, and I think it definitely made them look a lot more finished off than they did before. To attach the towers to the cake, I hot glued a wooden dowel into the side of it so that would anchor it down into the cake, and then I added some more royal icing along the base so that it would glue it down onto the top of the cake. These towers were covered in fondant, but they weren't actually edible, so I wasn't worried about hot gluing the dowel to it since I knew they weren't going to be eaten. Once I had all the towers placed, I added a few more snowdrifts just for some more stability and for looks, and then I added Elsa on top of it and finished it off by writing happy birthday on the bottom. I started off with a white base, and then I piped back over it with a smaller tip in the light blue. To finish it off, I airbrushed the entire cake with a silver shimmer just to give it the sparkly snow look, and then I almost forgot to add the snowflakes, but I added those quick at the end, and I just think it really finished it off, and they just look so cute on there. So let me know if you guys want a part 2 on how I assembled and stacked this cake.
This week, I set myself the task to see if I could make a Shrek cake in less than a week. So I started on the Tuesday and I had up until the Friday to get it finished. I used vanilla sponge and then I covered it in a layer of chocolate ganache to seal in all the freshness. And then I tried something new, which was to cover the cake in the ganache and then use that ganache to sculpt the face. I was pretty happy with how it looked, so I left the cake for the evening. And then I came down the next morning, and if you can notice in the background, yeah, that was an absolute fail. The face was far too heavy, the ganache was far too soft, so I had to start all over again with that, and I used some kebab skewers just to give the cake a little bit of something to grip onto. Then I layered the cake up with some fresh cake, obviously because the other cake had been on the floor, covered it in ganache, and then while I waited for that ganache to harden, I went and added on these layers of this coloured modelling chocolate on for his legs and his shoes. And then I moved on to adding on the little frilly section of his boots, and I just used modelling chocolate, which I bent over like that. Then I took a cutout of Shrek's face and placed it onto the head, and I used that to mark out all of his features. Then I went in with this yellowy green Shrek ogre skin colour modelling chocolate, and I put on small blobs until I could get the face into somewhat of the right shape. And this took probably about 2 hours to sculpt altogether, so I've sped it up for you because obviously you don't want to watch all that. Then I added a ball of the modelling chocolate on for his nose, and I don't know if you can notice, but if you can see how small my hands look next to this cake, you will realise how big this cake actually is. Shrek is just under 7 foot, so, you know, I think this cake ended up being about 6'4", maybe, I'm gonna say. But I covered the whole thing in a layer of modelling chocolate and then used a blowtorch and a clean cloth to give it this amazing fabric texture. Then I went in and added all of the last details to his clothes, including his belt and his hands. And then once I'd done that, I went on and added his little, I'm going to say snakeskin jacket, but I don't think it is snakeskin. Maybe dragon skin, because, you know, dragon, well, hopefully not, because donkey's bird anyway. So then I added on these last details, which was the little lace bit, which connected on his waistcoat. And then I went in and added on the final details to the face, which was painting on the lips, adding in these chocolate eyelashes, and then painting on the last eyelashes, eyebrows, and details on the face. And here you have it, the finished life-size Shrek cake, which I made in around 4 days. I had from Tuesday and I finished it on just early Friday morning, and I'm super happy with the result. I really love how it turned out. I think it could have been a little bit neater, but because I had such a short amount of time, I'm really happy with how it came out. Thanks for watching, guys. I really hope you like it. Come back again to see what I make next.